folks, Dave Ashenbrenner. Welcome back to my shop. I've got an interesting little project today. I'd like to show you kind of a technique that I do here. And we form our tanks, and usually in two pieces, sometimes three, depending on the depth and the shape of the tank. And then we measure it to make sure that it doesn't lose too much of its thickness while we're stretching the metal. A lot of this, I've had a couple people comment that it's stretching the metal out so much in one spot. However, when we flow form this, we're actually gathering. We use rubber mallets and things to drive the metal into one direction. We actually drive it toward the stretch in the metal, and it causes a lot of, I don't know if you can see this. This is a shrink right here on top. Get it in the right light. But you can see how the metal reacts to that. It's actually shrinking up here. So this metal is thicker up here, and it's thicker down here. You can see some shrink marks at the bottom of it too. It always likes to shrink back here. And we flatten those out. We planish those all out. And we're not done with planishing yet. We're going to treat the seam in the center now. We want to get rid of as much of the extra aluminum from the weld, and this has been electrically welded with a TIG torch and 1100 aluminum rod, which is the exact same thing as the parent metal here. And we got to also treat the inside of it. We've got some excess weld on the inside, so we're going to get right to that. And we want to take that off as quick as possible, but also as carefully as possible. We don't want to cut through or thin out the metal around the weld. So we're going to try to keep that weld, this thickness of the parent metal around it. And then we're going to, or just slightly more. Then we're going to planish this with a little planishing hammer to try to get that flat and smooth. And then what we'll do is we'll take it to the wheel and we'll finish it off and try to get everything contoured to the natural shape of the tank. So, okay, our next move is we want to take a little off the top and a little off the bottom, and we'll want to concave this in, right? We can get at this weld without hitting the edges of it. So we're going to deform the tank a little bit. This takes a little bit of finesse. We want to make sure that we bring this in so that this center of the seam is the high spot in the tank. That way we can easily get in here with a small grinder and grind away at that weld. We just go along slowly. These are going to pop back up again as the tank moves around. We don't want to get it any lower than necessary here. And we don't have to do it all at one time. We can work on this portion of the tank, then we can work on this portion of the tank. Because there is a tendency for when you're flexing this, another spot will pop. So. And my tool of choice for this is a little 2-inch pad here. It's got one of these roll lock devices, little threads on here, and it clips right in there. And I like to use beeswax on this part of it. It keeps it sharper. It's somewhat of a lubricant. It does mess with the inside of the tank. We have to do a lot of cleaning with acetone when we're done, but it does save us some time on this. And we put these on. The mess out of my hair. And out of my lungs. And we we're just going to carefully work the high spots. Okay, not sure if you can see this. I'm feathering it into the edges of the aluminum. And I'm letting a little bit of the weld, the edges of the weld show. This is telling me that the weld will be just a hair thicker than the metal around it. So we're going to keep doing this. We'll go all the way along this seam, and then we're going to pop that out and go along the top. Okay, so we've got a nice, we've got a little bit of edge on the weld showing along here. I'm going to go ahead and continue this probably off camera, pound these in, pound this out so this has a place to go. And we're just going to keep going and just finish this weld off. So. Okay, now we're doing the outside seam. Tool of choice for that is a little bit bigger. This is a 5-inch air grinder, multi-directional. This is nicer because you can run a flatter surface on it. Now we don't have to get in to a convex surface. We're on a concave surface. We're on a convex surface. So this should work pretty good. We may have to stop if we start seeing it go out onto the edge of the tank and just pop the tank out a little bit, but it's only necessary where you see that. So we're going to start out. And this is a 40 grit disc. Okay, now we take this over to the pneumatic planisher. This is very, very close to the surface right here. You want to go till well, any ledges that stick up on it are very minimal. I could probably do a little filing, and by the way, that's just one way of doing it. You can file this off, it just takes a lot longer. And the pads seem to flex down into the areas if you want to get this a little bit, and the top edge isn't perfectly flat. You can kind of tip it up on its tiptoe and get in here and make this a little bit more accurately smooth. So now we're just going to take it and run it across the planishing hammer with a very semi-dome top. We're going to probably have to change it in a couple spots here when we run over the front and the back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a very low crown bottom die on this one, and we're just going to get all the flat spots. So I'll probably start out right about here, and I'll run it all the way up to where it starts to get into this severe curve here. Then I'll come at it from behind, and I'll tackle this back part with this same die. Now we're going to have a little problem trying to get over it, so I'm going to nip the bottom. We've got about a 3-inch weld that we're going to end up cutting out of here anyway, so I'm going to just relieve this to make sure my die can fit through here. Okay, now we want to check on the inside just to make sure that weld is flattened out. It's completely flat. We've got just a little bit right up on this top edge here. I'm just going to go in there and just hold it on this spot right here, but the rest of this is really smooth. And the other thing I forgot to mention is you're pulling down on the part while you're doing this, otherwise it'll dent. It'll actually make a trough in here, or a ridge on one side or the other. Okay, so we're looking at putting another die in here. I don't know if you could hear that tone, the change in tone, but we're going to make a mark where that top basically transitions over. Top transitions over here, and I've got a template I can just stick up against that to make sure that line is right. This is a pretty important part of it here. Okay, and the die for the back corner over here has to fit in the contour of where you're going to be going with this. The next larger radius of this hits on the edges when I put it in here. This is actually a little bit too small of a radius, but we're going to just be real careful. We're going to go across here and just get that weld in that one spot. I can hand planish it down if I need to get in there where this doesn't reach, or if this is going to actually damage it. Whenever we take a tool to the metal, we're actually damaging it, so remember that, and you want to minimize that damage. When you use a hand slapper pounding with your hand, you're fixing the damage. That's a good way to kind of equate to what's happening here. So we're going to change this die out real quick, and off to town we go. Okay, we just got to really watch this close while we're doing this. Okay, that's where we need to be, and we can always use that die to, we got a little dent here. Use that bottom die, just slap down on it, and shape it. Okay, we're going to tackle the rest of that by hand. We've achieved planishing this down. And you probably see me going real gingerly along. And what happens is the contact area on this smaller radius die is putting so much pressure in one spot, you can really damage this fast. When you're putting it over a wide area, this hammer barely keeps up to it on aluminum. This isn't a very good hammer. But when you put it on one little concentrated spot, you're concentrating all that power. So that's kind of one thing to watch. We're just going to kind of, we're still working off that small radius, or a small radius. I'm just going to be careful. So, as always, thanks for stopping by the shop. This is Dave Ashenbrenner. We'll see you next time.